So now we have a basic Xamarin Forms app. Let's run it in a simulator or on a device. Now if you want to run your iOS app, you have to come down here to the associated directory, right click it and make sure Set as Startup Project is selected. And then up on the top left we have a Play, a Debug and an iPhone. You can either set it to Debug or Release. We're not going to worry about Release for a long time. And then the next menu will give us a list of devices. If you can't see any of these devices, then you need to open up Xcode on your Mac. And when that fires up, head over to Window, Devices, and in here you have a list of your simulators. If you want to add one, click the plus at the bottom, Add Simulator, and you can choose your simulator and your iOS version or download more simulators. But I've already got mine, so I'm just going to close that. And if we come back to Xamarin, you should then have a list of devices. And when I hit play, this is going to run it on my already open simulator. And magically, we have that bit of text that is aligned to the center of our screen. Now, it doesn't matter if you run this on an iPad or an iPad Pro, it'll always be aligned to the center. So just hit stop. And there we go. It's always aligned to the center because the content, the stack layout, is in the center of its container, and its container is the content page, which is the entire screen of your app. Okay, let's run this on Android. To do that, click app1.droid, right click, and go to Set as Startup Project. Then that project will become bold, which means at the top we change to an Android debug menu. Now here we can manage our Android devices, but before we do any of that, we want to come up to the top of Xamarin, click Tools, open Android SDK Manager, and in here we need to start installing various apps and Android versions, because obviously we can't have an emulator if we don't have a system image for Android. So I've already got 501 installed and I should have 403 installed. A general rule of thumb as a developer, and I'm saying this at the start of 2016, is that your minimum target level should be Android API 15. If you go below that, then you might start running into problems with compatibility, and it's really going to compromise your app's chances of running well on future devices. So the way you set a minimum version is you go to app1.droid, you double click it, go to Android application, and in here we have a minimum Android version. And mine's set at 15, and I think Xamarin does this automatically. Then you set a target, so it's going to build for this target. So I have to make sure I have API level 23 available. So if I scroll up, got 22, 20, I appear not to have 23. So I'm going to build this for 21, which was Android 5 or Lollipop, and click OK. This target Android version means that it just builds for that, but it will run on Android versions higher than that, so don't worry about that. And click OK. Come back to your SDK manager, scroll way down to the bottom, and we have to select our Android support library, our Android support repository, Google Play services if you're going to be using ads and the store and things like that. Let's see what else we have here. We can have our Xamarin installer. This speeds up your emulator experience. So let's select that, and I'm just going to install those packages. Let me switch off API 23, leave that on. Okay, install 5 packages. And once you've done that, come back, let me just click that, come back to this tutorial, and we'll be ready to install our simulators. Now, there are a few options for your Android simulator. The first one is the standard option, which is the normal Google simulator, which is slow as heck. Don't download this because it is hellish to work with. Your option 2 are various third-party services that work pretty well. Your third option is to use Xamarin's own Android player. Because they identified that Android was so sluggish, they had to make their own. So search for Xamarin Android player, and eventually when my internet works, I think I can code faster than my internet can download text. Finally loaded. So go ahead and click that link and it will take you to xamarin.com/android-player, and then download that for your OS X or Windows or whatever it is, and when that's done, come back to this tutorial. So let's install that downloaded file. Oops, click that twice. Click continue, da-di-da-di-da. And it'll install it. It's quite a small program. And once that's done installing, close it and then fire up the Android player. And then inside of here, we should have some stock images of the Google devices, so the Nexuses. So I'm just going to create a Nexus. Let's see. Let's have an API 19 Nexus 4. So I'm just going to download that and install it. And once that's complete, simply hit New Device, and it should be created. Once it's created, head back to Xamarin, quit it and restart it, just to be sure that it picks up our simulators. So I'm just going to close this Android player. There we go. And I'm going to fire up Xamarin Studio again. And when I do, and I open my project, I should have access to that simulator that I just created. So up in our debug menu, let's hit our Nexus 4 and play, and it's going to build it and then start up our device and run it on there. And there we have it. It's running on our Nexus. And just for giggles, I'm going to open it up on our iOS, and there we have your very first Xamarin Forms cross-platform solution loaded on an iPhone and an Android device. Now it's worth saying that you can just plug in an Android device to your Mac or your PC and run directly on there. There are no special permissions required or certificates to download, unlike with Apple. Alright, in a subsequent lecture, we're going to modify this screen a little bit, and what we're going to do is start separating out some code to follow our MVVM pattern.